Genetic makeup is the only factor that absolutely prevents one from making it to the bodybuilding elite all on its own. A person with truly spectacular genetics could certainly become a professional bodybuilder with a mediocre diet, training, and drug plan. Let's check out some of the most genetically gifted bodybuilders. Number 10. Darrem Charles. This is a name that many people would probably leave off their list of athletes with the most gifted genetics due to Darrem's lack of bodybuilding success in comparison to the other athletes on this list. But I think that's a mistake. Based on Darrem's look and the fact that he became a professional bodybuilder without the use of drugs, it's safe to say that the only reason Darrem failed to win the Arnold Classic or place top 3 at the Olympia was his refusal to use high amounts of drugs. Not only did Darrem turn pro naturally, but he was able to avoid cardio his entire career and continues to look like a ripped, freaky bodybuilder with perfect skin even into his late 40s. Number 9. Lee Priest. The owner of the greatest arms of all time belongs in any discussion of genetics. The blonde myth was arguably the greatest teen bodybuilder of all time, displaying a physique at a mere 17 years old that most guys could not attain in a lifetime. Assuming the drug amounts Lee claims are true, which I fully believe they are, it all but certainly makes Lee the lightest drug user to ever place in the top 8 at the Olympia several times over in the last 2 decades or longer. There may be no greater example of a man being born to be a bodybuilder than Lee Priest. Number 8. Dexter Jackson. What can you say about the Blade? Dexter is the undisputed king of 2 very impressive bodybuilding achievements. These achievements are the most consistent bodybuilder of all time, as well as the most successful 45-year-old bodybuilder in history. Not only that, but Dexter started his bodybuilding career as a bantamweight, which means he has literally gained over 100 pounds of muscle in his career. As far as Dexter's metabolism is concerned, the Blade hit the jackpot there as well. Dexter, much like Darrem, avoided cardio and ab work for the majority of his career and openly admits to eating junk food on his diet. Number 7. Lee Haney. People seem to forget that Lee Haney was able to win Mr. Olympia a record 8 times by the time he was in his early 30s. It takes most genetically gifted men until that age just to build a pro-caliber physique. Much like the case of Flex Wheeler, it is said that Lee Haney was able to get away with some actions that we mortals would never be able to. Lee was often seen eating foods such as ice cream very close to contests, and let's not forget his famous saying, "Stimulate, don't annihilate." In order to use a training philosophy that essentially says, don't train too hard and still be the best bodybuilder on earth for 8 years in a row, takes some pretty elite genetics. Number 6. Kevin LEVRONE. What would a list of the top genetically gifted bodybuilders be without the Maryland muscle machine Kevin LEVRONE? This genetic monster was as impressive as a bodybuilder could get, and until this day, it's still hard to believe he had never won a Mr. Olympia contest. He literally looked like a superhero because of his perfect lines, fullness, and sheer size. LeVrone's best body parts were without a doubt his arms, shoulders, and traps. No one could argue that Kevin LEVRONE had one of the greatest physiques of all time. He held the record for most IFBB wins with 23 pro wins until Ronnie Coleman surpassed this record. LEVRONE placed second in the Mr. Olympia competition 4 times, which is incredible in itself. Number 5. Matt Mendenhall. AKA Mr. Genetics, the greatest bodybuilder to never turn pro, Matt Mendenhall was something special. Heck, if Lee Haney thought Mendenhall was the most genetically gifted bodybuilder he had ever seen, then he deserves a spot here. Haney describes Matt Mendenhall as having no weaknesses other than his drive and passion for the sport. He suffered from illnesses and even an accident where he was flung out of a car, so nothing was easy for him. However, it's evident he no longer took as much of an interest in the sport due to the mental aspect of competing. His career looked very promising as he placed behind Lee Haney in 1982 at only 22 years of age. However, in 1983 he had the flu 3 weeks out from the NPC Nationals, which stripped him of body weight, and his conditioning fell off significantly. Mendenhall competed for a few years with no luck, and then in 1986 he placed second again at the NPC Nationals before falling ill again, and he truly never recovered after this. His career fell off, and after a few more appearances, Mendenhall decided to throw in the towel for good. So regardless of the unfortunate circumstances, Matt Mendenhall was definitely a gem in the sport of bodybuilding. Number 4. Flex Wheeler. If there was ever a perfect specimen created just for bodybuilding, then Kenneth Flex Wheeler would be that person. The Sultan of Symmetry had a physique that was iconic and praised by the best of the best. In fact, Arnold Schwarzenegger said Flex Wheeler was one of the greatest bodybuilders he had ever seen. Wheeler was honestly probably the greatest bodybuilder ever to never have won the Mr. Olympia competition. Many still believe it was a shame for him to have never been awarded a first-place trophy. Flex Wheeler's most notable attributes were his tiny joints and waist, so combine that with long, full muscle bellies, and you have the definition of a godlike physique. Wheeler won the Arnold Classic 4 times and placed second at the Mr. Olympia contest 3 times. Number 3. Big Ramy. There's no way that you could have a list like this without mentioning Mahmoud Elsbieh. The man known as Big Ramy burst onto the scene only a few short years ago and is now considered one of the best bodybuilders in the world. Big Ramy has the kind of genetics to give any bodybuilder pause, even current champ Phil Heath. He weighed over 310 pounds on stage, getting as heavy as 350 or 360 in the off-season, achieving a size that many bodybuilders in his competition will never even come close to. He's won a slew of IFBB Pro shows, taking second at the 2017 Mr. Olympia. This extraordinary degree of muscle growth has caused some to hypothesize that Ramy is actually the result of some kind of extreme drug experiment. In other words, his gains in muscle mass are impossible to explain in a logical manner. The only weakness Ramy has is an inability to reach the flawless conditioning that is required to win Mr. Olympia. Every other bodybuilder alive better pray that Ramy never overcomes this one weakness, because if he does, nobody will even be close to him. Number 2. Ronnie Coleman. If you didn't see this one coming, then you're likely never followed bodybuilding, because the king, Ronnie Coleman, is the freak among freaks, which is why he is tied for most Olympia wins with 8 titles to his name. When you think of freaky, Ronnie Coleman naturally comes to mind because he has size, conditioning, and genetics which were off the charts. His vascularity was just insane. Now, let's not take anything away from Ronnie Coleman by just talking about his genetics, because he busted his butt in and out of the gym, and it showed on stage. You can find videos of him squatting 800 pounds and dumbbell pressing 200 pounds in each hand, so there was no lacking in his work ethic. The man deserved his 8 Olympia titles and is a fan favorite even up until this day. Number 1. Phil Heath. So not everyone will agree, but taking all factors into consideration regarding ideal genetics for a bodybuilder, Phil Heath is without a doubt a gift to the sport of bodybuilding. Besides the fact that people mention his more narrow clavicles compared to other competitors, Heath has no flaws. In fact, his 7 Mr. Olympia titles prove he is a one-of-a-kind talent, especially to win so many times in the current era of bodybuilding, and many people believe he deserved an 8th. When Phil Heath won his first Olympia title in 2011, there was literally no one in history who could have looked better. Now, we must explain why Heath has arguably the best genetics of any bodybuilder. His arms are arguably the greatest the sport has ever seen. When you think of big arms, you think of Phil Heath. His triceps are so long and full that Roly Winklar may be the only guy to compare him to in that department. So when paired with his long, full, and well-developed biceps, it's game over. He has incredible legs, a massive and full chest, and probably one of the greatest backs we've ever seen. Looks like a road map back there. Literally everything about Phil Heath is as close to unworldly perfection as you can get. A big reason for this is the fact that his muscle bellies are so long and full compared to most other bodybuilders who aren't as genetically blessed. This is where Heath has beaten nearly everyone, and although many people might not agree, his incredibly impressive feat of winning 7 Sando trophies in modern times would seem nearly impossible for anyone else at any point in time. That's all for this video, folks. See you another time.